This is Find Your Flow, a show about navigating the complexities of life and business through the lens of curiosity. I'm your host, Angelique, and I bring together experts to deliver responsibly curated conversations and perspectives that aim to progress people and the planet. One thing I absolutely love about hosting this show is the opportunity to interview a variety of people from all different backgrounds, from wellness experts to entrepreneurs and every creative type in between. So today is no different. However, this may be up there on the list of most niche and different and exciting creative careers that I've come across. And so without further ado, we're going to dive into the world of superyacht design. And joining me is David Weiss, a guru in the art of crafting floating masterpieces. And David also happens to be one of my good friends. We've known each other for a better part of as long as I've been in Raleigh, about 10 years or so. And watching your work and all the different events and things that you get to go to showcase your work around the world is incredible. So I'd love to share more about how you got into this niche, this area of creative career, and maybe a little bit about the design philosophy behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome to be here, especially with a buddy like you, and awesome to have seen all the stuff you've done with Find Your Flow and that sort of thing. And I've not seen the intro for some reason until recently, and really like that too. Well done. But yeah, I inhabit an interesting part of the world, and I have all different kinds of names for myself, some of which are repeatable and some of which are not. But I tend to lean on calling myself somewhat of an arsonist of creativity. I just sort of end up creating, setting creative fires in different industries and different venues and that sort of thing. Mostly boats. But all over the shop, and occasionally need to go pour some more gasoline on a particular project to keep the fire going and that sort of thing. But that fuel is what I sort of started enjoying at a pretty early age. I was always sketching. I had sketchbooks out the wazoo and never stopped sketching. I got in trouble constantly growing up for drawing stuff all over my homework that had nothing to do with my homework. But as I've made clear to my mom, all those sketchings that I did on all of my homework is what I ended up doing for my whole life and my career. So that was studying too, but I remember early on, my dad was is a big car guy, and as you can see behind me with
Can't tell.
the stuff that is scattered all over behind me here, I'm still a car guy, and wanted to. I sort of realized with my passion for drawing and sketching, that somebody gets to draw these cars and create them, and from some spark up here, drag it kicking and screaming out into the real world and give birth to this thing that you desperately want to get out of your head. And it's like, well, that sounds cool. I love doing that anyway with all the stuff I do and playing with Legos, and I tell people I just never stopped playing with Legos. They just got bigger and
bigger and bigger
and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yep, exactly. That one there is 212 feet long. What
is that?
That's a monster. That's Galactica Star. That's a 65 meter all aluminum custom super yacht. At the time, it was the largest and fastest boat the shipyard had ever built. Very, very. I can tell a little bit of that story, but I was sort of fixated on cars. I have thousands and thousands of car sketches and conversations I had, etc. And there's pretty much three prominent schools that are sort of car design schools that people go to. There's a few more, but there are three that I was familiar with. There's uh, Coventry in England, Pforzheim in Germany, and there's Art Center in Pasadena in the U.S. And there's also one in Detroit, which I know you've got a lot of love for. But
CCS, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I looked at that, but I just couldn't stomach the weather very well. I've lived in some very cold parts of the world, but I've never gotten around to embracing that. I joke now that from now on I want to fly and visit the snow. It doesn't need to fly and visit me anymore.
Hey, I landed in the South, so you know I'm on board with that.
Yep. Although we did have some ice outside this morning, but so I was looking at Art Center in California and had it all the paperwork filled out and was headed full blast in that direction. And I then found out I was going to be a big brother again. And I was a little taken aback because I was, 18 years old and mom and dad, full of surprises, I guess. And I just started thinking about that and thought, I don't want to come home every 6 months and have my new little brother kind of going, who the heck are you? And so I thought, well, what do I do then? And so I started looking a little bit more closely at some of the more local design school options around here and landed on NC State, which happened to be one of the premier public design school. I think it was the number one public design school in the country at the time. So it's exactly. So it still felt a little bit like a consolation prize, but it ended up being a fantastic school with incredible faculty. And I leaned in there strongly, but I was still pushing on car stuff a lot while I was studying. And right before I graduated, I think it was just a week before I graduated, literally, a guy walked through our studio on campus and saw some sketches that I'd done. Probably car sketches, I believe. Said, "I like your stuff. You should design for me." I said, "Oh, thanks. What do you design?" And he said, "Custom super yachts." And I said,
"Wow,
okay." Wasn't expecting that answer. And I, to be honest, my first response was that's kind of sounded boring because there's this stuffy component to ship design and some of the old gin palaces and that sort of thing. And I respect the legacy of it, but to me, that space sort of felt like it had been stuck a little bit. But my second barrage of thought on that front was, well, if it's stuck, maybe I can help it get unstuck. And so I only worked with that guy for about a week, and he ended up they lost one of their lead designers during that week, unexpectedly. And so at the end of that week, they said, you're still sort of in a trial phase. We can't go full time with you right now. And I was bummed about that, but I'd seen enough behind the curtain to know that there's a lot of creative possibility here, more so than designing the door handles on the next Ford Taurus, So
yeah, you got a flavor for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was something that I thought, well, I'll try this for a little bit, and that was about 18 years ago. So I'm still trying.
How you kind of get that spark, you get that bug, and the next thing you know, everything's just a blur, and you don't. I think that's kind of the interesting thing about being a creative as well, and you get to see your work out in the world.
Oh yeah.
And I think for me, a lot of it in advertising, it was, maybe billboards, a lot of film and commercials that I had produced in the broadcast world, doing a lot of that. And,
It's the
uh,
best.
but in your sense, you
Yeah.
can step onto your boat. You can, uh, it's not just, I know you've designed some that are maybe located in like Lake Powell, but
Yeah.
you're also, I mean, you're all over the world. You're traveling to these boat shows and yacht shows in like Monaco. And I know you've talked about maybe even, high-end clients that you've had in these other countries. I
Yeah.
mean, what is that feeling like walking onto your vessel?
It's wild. It's something that is a very surreal experience. It's almost some amount of cognitive dissonance involved because you spend so much time just, this is my design computer over here, just spending hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours
Mm,
on board the creation that you're sort of carving out of time and space and trying to pull it into the real world. And so, I sort of consider myself the first owner of all of these boats because I'm the one walking around on them, you know, literally, in digital form and just in my mind as I'm trying to imagine what might be best case scenarios and possibilities and everything with these vessels. But you're right, when you finally get to step foot on them, walk around them, it is bizarre because I've spent so much time with it already to actually be able to step foot on it and then go out into the ocean. It's this wild and weird moment, and it's something that I it is sort of like I describe it like hearing your song on the radio for the first time. It's sort
yeah.
of you watching the boat pull into port after, and these boats, depending on how big they are, like this one behind me here is about 2.5 to 3 years to build that one boat. So
Wow.
it's
Wow.
a long time. It's sort of, in some ways I equate it to the film world and the movie world where, if you're in the art department and the production design team, you're designing, the spaceships and the monsters and all of that for the movie, and then they go shoot the movie, or in my
Mhm.
case, they go build the boat, and it takes hundreds of people, months and months and months to execute that movie or the boat,
Right. Right.
and then the boat finally comes out, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, there it is. What do you know?
Whoa.
And to some extent, you stay involved through the process and sort of shepherding capacity to make sure that things stay on the rails and as
Mhm.
much as possible. And
Yeah.
like that boat in particular, the wing that the radar, the satellite domes sit on, my original design for that wing was pretty complex and very swoopy. And uh, they said this, we could build this, but it would cost 4 times, 5 times how much we have budgeted to build this wing. Can you give us another one?
Right.
And so I had to sort of then go back in and reinterpret that, keep the soul of it, but simplify it a little bit, and pretty happy with the result. But it is wild. There's a sort of a weird moment where like, is this real life? Because I've imagined standing here on this deck
Mhm.
literally years, and to actually be there is a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Well, I come from Motor City, and no discredit to car designers. It's absolutely incredible, yeah,
Right.
especially going to the Motor City, the motor show. It's fascinating. But how you're describing this is these are one of a kind. So
Yeah.
when you go get into car production, it's usually mass produced. And
Right.
so you see it and you replicate it. And it's awesome because it goes all over the world as well. But you've got these one of a kind designs that, like you said, take years to build. And then they're, all over the world, but they're just massive, massive. I mean, I think you said 61 feet was the one, or 52 feet,
Which one?
the one in your picture behind you.
This is 65 meters, so that's
Oh,
212 feet long. Yeah. Yeah.
I missed the meters.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. It's
Ah,
just it was
God
about,
damn.
it was sold for at the time close to $90 million.
Yeah, that's nothing. Yeah.
It's a very, I mean, like I said, there's entire towns full of amazing, skilled builders and craftsmen and uh, people in all kinds of different levels of craft, from welding to painting to woodworking to, furniture making, all the way into the super high tech bleeding edge tech that goes into these things, and the incredible propulsion capabilities, and um, the people that do the hydrodynamics to make sure I do more above the water line, and
Sure,
then
but still, I mean,
the naval architect is this, Gandalf wizard that figures out how the water moves around it, just like air moves around an airplane. You've got to figure out the ways that to do that in such a way that it's stable, it's efficient, it's comfortable, and so on. So it's people
a
have
lot
said
goes
that
into it.
the only thing that is as complex as some of these creatures is possibly spacecraft and aviation, because you have every single skill set and set of functionalities represented that need to be delivered at the highest level. So
Yes. Yes.
it's
And it's, I mean, yeah, at the highest level, I mean, I think about, you've got to have respect for the water.
yes,
And understanding the dynamics of water and the water that it goes into is so important. And so it
yeah,
sounds like in many ways, because engineers, that's another creative field that just is so fascinating to me. The way that they think, the things that they have to understand, and then the right brain, left brain of, oh, and you have to be really good at
yeah.
math
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
measurements and aerodynamics and all of that. And one of the things that I thought was interesting that you said about in your childhood, always creating, always getting into something.
yeah,
It always fascinates me about the minds of creatives, because I feel like that's such a common thread for us.
yeah,
And a lot of times people are always like, "Oh God, what is she doing now? What are they getting into?" I actually had a great conversation with a colleague today that's like, uh, I think they had seen my bio somewhere about some of the things that I enjoy. And they're like, "You have so many hobbies. How do you have so many hobbies?" I'm like, sometimes I have too many hobbies, but
yeah. I can't help it.
creative, it's hard not to get your hands in things. And like you said, yes, you focus on super yacht design, but you've got your hands in other creative projects and endeavors.
Absolutely. Yep.
When it comes to the creative brain, and I just creatives in general,
Yeah.
how would you say they're set apart from, I don't want to say other normal people, but yeah, what sets us apart, you
Yeah.
think?
I
Good or
I
bad?
there's lots of things to say there, but I'm a big believer that we all have some of this in us. That there is, and to me, it's borne out in the fact that I'll talk to somebody who's a client, who we're putting something together, and I'm designing the project for them, and the conversation or the relationship will start with them saying, I can't even draw a straight line or a stick figure or something like that, to which I always replied, neither could I till I practiced. It's not something that came out of my mom, able to do. It's really something that you can have a passion for it, but you have to cultivate it. But the funny thing is, that same person will go, fast forward a week or two or three or a little more, when we start putting the initial drafts and designs and results in front of them, they start getting super excited about seeing this thing come to life. And then they start saying, could we do this? How about that? And so their own creativity starts to get infused
Yeah.
into the process. And so, I just see, one of my favorite things about what I do is awakening other people's creativity and sort of inviting them to be, collude in the
Mhm.
in the creative process.
That's such
And
a powerful aspect also, because just being in those rooms, being in those experiences, like you just feel so on fire, ignited when your brain's firing in those cylinders, and being able to creatively think, design, put words together. I mean, there's so many creative elements that come into that.
There are, and it's that, to me, the raw spark of bringing something to life in the early days. It is really, I've learned to love the long tail of fine tuning execution and finding solutions for small issues of fabrication and construction and stuff like that. But I just love that moment of just pulling things from the void and just starting to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And I
Pulling things from the void. I
yeah.
like that. That's an interesting view on that.
Well, and it may be a little bit disingenuous way to say it, because as you can see, I mean, I've got books and books and books and dinosaurs and cars and magazines and I was telling you earlier, I've got almost 100,000 photos on my phone. Like, but it all just sort of lives together, and sort of you just reach in and scoop out a grand collection of ideas and try and put things together. And it also has to do with the collaborative aspect. I'm a big believer in meeting your heroes. I've ended up, I told you I almost went to art center. One of the main faculty there, Scott Robertson, that was there when I was looking at going to school there, is now a friend and occasional collaborator. And we've got a text thread where we bounce ideas off of each other, and getting out there and realizing that, especially in the modern world, the digital side of the modern world, where you can really reach out and touch anyone, is also a great creative place to go for finding vision and a spark and overall just mission.
Yeah. And creativity and the creative process can sometimes be a lonely space.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so to have those collaborators, have those people that you can bounce things off of, because I think that was the one thing I really enjoyed when I was, my undergrad minor is in fine arts, and I learned to be able to know how to give constructive criticism, but also to receive it. And if there's one thing that I love so much now I've worked in marketing and brand marketing and advertising, commercial, I want that feedback. I want that criticism. I want to be challenged. I want my ideas to be challenged, because it's the fun part of it.
Yeah.
You get to speak to and really sell in your idea, but then you can be creative. And I think having that, you have those collaborators then. Absolutely. You have those people to challenge you.
And sharing is like I know artists that just create art and it's just for themselves. And that is not me. I'm sorry. It's just not. Like, occasionally, but to me, one of my favorite moments of designing or creating anything is when it starts to just gel, and I get to see and feel that moment of everything harmonizing, coming to life. But the second favorite is when I get to put it in front of the people that asked for it.
Yeah.
And see their eyes light up, and you're right. It can be a very sort of isolated place to be and to live as a creative, us weird creatives. But a way around that is inviting, like I said, inviting these co-conspirators into that process. That's one of my favorite pieces of this whole pie.
Yeah. We certainly keep things interesting, probably keep some people on their toes. I think my parents would have definitely agreed with that aspect of, like, what is she into now? What is she creating? What is she, thinking up next? And
I had mentors, saying things like, have you ever considered getting a real job and stuff like that? Like,
Yeah.
it makes people
Yeah.
uncomfortable. Fear, I think a big part of it is fear of the unknown, because
Oh,
working in this space, you're really working in the unknown.
yep. Yep.
So,
Yep. I'm
um,
so glad that you said that too, because that's something I struggled with for a period of time. I come from a family of, military and accounting and lawyers and doctor, and it's just like,
yeah,
so what do you do? You're like traveling to these islands and filming, commercials, like, and you're designing. I remember my mom had this newsletter for her work in
yeah,
accounting, and every year, her newsletter to her clients, I was something else. I
yeah,
mean, he said
yeah,
she's a designer and now she's doing, I mean, which is fair too. I've also had a lot of different roles, but it was just funny to see what they come up with. And I think that's also the other fun part about it too, is I think the creative brain knows no limits. And you might have one area that you specialize in, but
yeah,
then
yeah,
you find creativity and curiosity to be your superpower.
yeah. Oh,
And you can
absolutely.
take that anywhere. You can, and I had an interview that I did with this great gentleman from Detroit, Jacob Brown, where, we kind of cheat a little bit because we can reinvent ourselves. We can rebrand ourselves. We can adapt to change,
Mhm.
I think, and I don't want to say like, just toot our own horn here and say that that's an advantage and superpower that we have, but perhaps.
No, I think it is. I think it's something that, it's a superpower, but it's also something that's almost a necessity as well in this space.
Yeah.
Um, you get to the bottom of the bucket sometimes, and you just don't have anything more from that particular corner to give, and you've got to go find something fresh, and that's something I have to do almost constantly, is curating.
Mhm.
It sounds exhausting. It can be a little bit, but if done right, it can be one of the best parts of life, is just curating curiosity and finding new places, deep dives with artists and musicians and uh, film and relationships and on and on and on. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I
I've
think that's also why you have 1,000 photos on your phone and 100 books and dinosaurs and boats and wheels and things just right in the room with you.
yep, yep,
That
absolutely.
creativity and experience is at your fingertips. But I like how you said relationships too. And I know we touched on that a little bit because um, there's also an element I think of creativity because we're so curious that, and I've noticed this about myself. I tend to want to have deep conversations, even with people that I just meet. And I
Yeah.
think that's a
I
little bit
noticed that about you right away.
dramatic,
That was one of my favorite things. Like, wow, that's a real person.
but hey, nice to meet you. Like,
Yeah,
oh, let's hear about what's your philosophy on XYZ.
yeah,
But I think that's the fun part of getting to know people is then you really understand how they think, not just how they act in that moment or surface level things. There's always space for that, but really understanding how people think and how they view the world. Maybe it's just the fastest way to connection too.
I think it is, and it's something that I bounced around for a while. After I graduated, I worked with that guy um, very briefly, and then it took a while before I got a quote unquote real design job, and I ended up working in multiple coffee shops. I worked as a valet. And I worked at a valet at a really high end hotel, and that I thought, I was frustrated a little bit because like, hey, I graduated. I'm here with my degree. I'm ready to go out and take on the world. Little did I know that those sort of interruptions on that journey were actually massively important pieces of the puzzle of learning culture, learning people, learning the luxury space when I was parking people's cars for them and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
was able to walk into meetings with millionaires and billionaires when I
Mm,
moved to Europe to start designing these big boats
yeah.
with complete confidence, because I did that every day when I was parking people's cars and making small talk about their world and understanding what their world was, whereas my boss only did that 4 or 5 times a year.
Yeah.
And he went in, he was like, you seem so comfortable here. I've been doing this for 30 years and you're more comfortable doing it than I am. And it was the people side,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Love
So
that you said that. Love that you said that, because there's so much that I think people think if you take one path and you really know it, and sometimes I get frustrated with that concept of 10,000 hours and the whole concept of grit, because I get it, yes, but at the same time, if you don't allow yourself to be a generalist, to
yeah,
pull from different areas of
yeah,
creativity, to pull from different experiences, I mean, there is nothing in my college or educational experiences that I think prepared me as much for the real world and the job that I have now and jobs that I will have in the future than every other, my paper route, my garage sales that my lemonade stands that I used to host, that helped me be a better entrepreneur.
yeah,
There's so many parts of that feed into the
absolutely.
whole. And I
I
always
was
tell,
I was washing dishes at one point.
yeah,
I was washing dishes and had to go outside out back and get the suds off of my arms
yep,
in order to take a call about a lead yacht design position that I was stepping.
hey.
Like the confluence of those things is fantastic. It's the meat of the whole meal.
And to kind of tie a bow on that also is it gives you the opportunity to know what it takes and to do all the different jobs and know that you're not above anything.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
so many times I hear people like, they thought I was going to clean up this or I was going to do this and they wanted me to. And it's like, hey, be a team player. Like, I
yeah,
know what it's like to have to take the trash out, but then also, close, your own deals and things like that. Like, it's just, yeah, you have a lot more respect for those jobs and those people because those people may be your boss one day. And I'm a firm believer that the people and the CEOs and the entrepreneurs that know how to do the grunt work of the job that they're hiring people to do and have respect for it are much better leaders. And it's kind of the same theory of like, treat the janitor and the CEO with the same respect as you would anybody.
absolutely.
Anybody.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, the other thing that I would say too for young creatives, whenever I talk with them about, ideas for where to go in their career, where to get started, I'm always like, go work at an agency, go be an intern, get your hands dirty, get overworked, maybe burn out, like go travel, go get your hands dirty,
yeah,
go learn from these different industries, do all the things
yeah.
because it'll all come together.
Stop trying to polish your silver bullet.
Yeah,
Get
stop
out there.
trying to polish your silver bullet.
Yeah,
I
exactly,
love
exactly.
it. Where can people get a hold of you? Where can we find you?
I'm everywhere. But Instagram has turned into a major inflection point for me as far as people use social media for all kinds of different things. I tend to use it as a platform for starting interesting conversations, and so I've started the most fascinating journeys from Instagram and LinkedIn and so on. So Instagram, I'm JDW Design, and then professionally, I've got there's a lot of other David Weisses out there, including
A
one guy who's
politician.
a professional. Yeah, there's a bizarre breadth of David Weiss's, but my favorite one is a guy who actually is a classical saw player. Like he plays like the things you saw down trees with the London
Fantastic.
Philharmonic and stuff like that. I think he passed away recently. All that to say, if you're looking for me, you'll find me as J. David Weiss because my first name is Jonathan, and so threw that out there to make myself a little bit more Googleable, and it's worked pretty well.
Googleable. Thank you for that.
Important.
So
SEO matters.
Googleable. I love it. And by the
Um,
way, I would like some credit because I had so many puns that I wanted to use for the
oh, yeah.
introduction of this, like
No.
welcome aboard. And like I'm like, okay, so don't.
These things write themselves.
They do.
I have I don't know how many times I've had people tell me about me making waves and that sort of thing. So you got to consider that this is the other 70% of the Earth's surface, and you've got to build something that goes up against that and doesn't lose. So it's humanity's been fighting this fight for millennia, lot longer than cars.
That's fair.
So,
I love it. I love it. Well, I know that I'll probably talk to you soon. I appreciate your time and sharing this story. And
absolutely.
absolutely, we'll see you soon, David.
Thanks so much for having me.